Hey, YouTube. Let's do this. And hey, everybody, welcome to Squatch Talk. I'm Pat. How's everybody doing tonight? Glad you're here. Good to see everybody here. Looking around in chat. Looks great. Lockbeard just showed up. I think Jorge's floating around here somewhere. We got Central Florida Bigfoot. What's up, Jay? Hey, Eric, what's up? Eric James, glad you're here. Barb. Sandra. Life. Brian and Chewy go hiking. I want to meet Chewy. Daily Dan's the good stuff. What's up, dude? We're glad you're here. I'm glad to have you here. See a lot of people opining about Strange Animal. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Just like every other song written on the planet. Nothing I can do, folks. The lyrics are brilliant for Bigfoot. And of course, Gowan did not, that was not his intention. Anyway, Patty Troy, what's up? Glad you're here. And Donald, what's up, dude? Donald had to opine too about the song. Yeah, I hear you. I play a different song every time, and I don't play roll with the changes very often. That's sort of a special one for special times. Anyway, I already said hey. What's up, Lockbeard? Hope you're doing well, man. Hope you are well. And hey, give me a call sometime, Lock. Maybe you've tried. I don't know, but oh. Hey, what's up, my three healers? Glad you're here. Appreciate you tuning in tonight. It is Strange Animal is my intro song to let the stream build up. And some people hate it, some people love it, just like every other song ever written. Again. But thanks for being here, my three. Glad you're here. Oh, a fellow Georgian. What's up? We're going to talk about Georgia tonight. Greetings from Coal Mountain, Georgia. Awesome. Love it. Great place. Great place, great area. Kind of squatchy. Could be a little squatchy, maybe. I don't know. But glad to hear from you, my fellow Georgian. Anybody from Florida here? Besides Matt? How many Floridians do we have? Because we're going to talk. We're going to talk about the Florida-Georgia line. And no, not that crappy country band. Oops, sorry. See, I have my own opinions about music. Barb. Okay, Barb's in Florida. Eastern Ohio. Maybe. I'm not familiar with the geography. I'll have to look. I'll check the map. I'll check the map. So there's a couple of people from Florida. This is true, Eric. But that Florida does not. Oh wait, did I pull that up? Hold on. Where'd it go? Did I accident? Oh, yeah, no, here it is. That is true, Eric James. They do, but Florida does not own the heavy precipitation in the United States. What, and it's more than that. It's not about wet climate, it's about wet forested areas. Hey man, what's up? Glad you're here. Get somebody get Jay out of here. I think he developed a little bit of dementia over the evening. Somebody needs to tell Jay he doesn't live in Florida. Oh, he says he's from Florida. He says he's from Florida. Well, that's an interesting story, Jay. We'll have to talk about it sometimes. How in the world did you get from... Hold on. You guys will understand this better. From here to here. How'd that happen? I don't know. I'm guessing you're saying you were born in Florida. That's okay. Don't kick Jay out. Nah. It was a joke. Just like you. Or maybe not. Maybe Tim's here, by the way. Maybe Tim's not a joke. We'll find out. Cool, Jay. I'm just glad you're here. Wherever you're from. Sorry, I'm doing that thing tonight. I've got a little bad drainage. I think I need to change the filter on my HVAC because it just, I gotta keep the windows open. I don't. My environment's kind of weird, and smoking doesn't help that. Anyway, yes, Jay, I know. We have formed a consensus. The Appalachian Trail, unbeknownst to us, starts in Ocala. Not sure how that happened. Anyway, we are going to hold on. The bathe, does it lather? I don't know. I've only met one person in my life that said they saw a Bigfoot sort of wallowing in the mud. So it didn't get into the water, but it kind of took a mud bath. I don't know. Not sure how reliable that is. And so now, or hey, you're gonna get all kinds of responses in chat. All right, let's get into the show. Enough dragging this out. Hold on, give me 2 seconds though. Just 2 seconds. Or 20. So me and Matt, just in case you guys don't know, see if I can pull him up. Matt, did you say something interesting? Yeah, here we go. We'll just use that. Me and Matt from Central Bigfoot, Florida, who Matt is also my, he checks the tape. When the tape needs checking, Matt checks the tape. And for that, I appreciate him. But we have a friendly rivalry going, all in jest. A sort of a Georgia-Florida rivalry, not about college football, and a kayak researching versus drone researching friendly rivalry. Again, all in jest. And so we were sort of hashing that out the other day in jest. We also have GIF wars. All kinds of fun things happen behind the scenes. We're like kids. Like we turn into children sometimes. It's funny. And but it actually got my brain turning, which is an amazing thing. When the wheels start turning in my brain, I love that. And so it actually got me thinking, because I've always sort of pondered the idea, are Bigfoot trapped in Florida? We certainly think there are Bigfoot there because there's enough, enough anecdotal evidence to, sort of support that state as being a legitimate phenomena state. It's not just a handful of reports from 100 years ago, or anything like that. So this isn't about if they're there or not. We're going to go on the assumption that the anecdotal body supports the phenomena. Whatever the phenomena is, does exist there. And so I guess the other assumption that we're going to kind of have to go with on this is, it's a flesh and blood sort of undiscovered hominin. Okay, so you kind of have to, you can't really include portals or some of that woo stuff in this discussion. So are they trapped there? So let's all recognize the phenomena exist there. They are there in flesh and blood form. Are they trapped there? Obviously, being on a peninsula state surrounded by water, ocean, and is there a path out? And so before we begin, I have these three questions, if I can remember them. And it is, so between, say, Florida and North Georgia, and you could include some of the other areas of like northern Alabama, parts of maybe northern South Carolina too. So we're not talking about state lines, but we're talking about the huge swath between Florida and the Appalachian Mountains, basically. So I have three important questions, and I'll just ask them real quick. I'm not going to answer them myself. I'm just going to ask them. My questions are, why would they want to leave? Why, if ever, would they even want to leave their sort of Florida habitats that they have there? Why would they want to leave? How would they know what awaited them, which would be the coastal plains of Georgia? How would they know what they were even getting into if they decided to, explore north, which is their only option? Because I'm also going to assume they understand there's water that way and there's water that way, and so north would be the only like filter of habitat to even explore, right? So how would they know what would even lie ahead of them, and how would they navigate those 400 miles, roughly 350, something like that? So those are my three questions. Why would they want to leave? How would they know what awaits them in that direction? And how would they navigate it? So I think those are the three kind of major questions to ask about this sort of idea. And the other thing I want to say is this, is that even though Matt and I, we rib each other about this kind of stuff, and it's all fun. I think it's actually a serious discussion worth having, because I think maybe there's some, I don't know that knowledge to be gained, maybe, but there can be a bigger discussion about this idea that will kind of lead to maybe some kind of consensus. I don't know that that's the right word I want to use either, because consensus doesn't define reality. It doesn't shape reality. But just some kind of better understanding and idea through thought and discussion, serious discussion about trying to understand if they could or couldn't navigate these kinds of areas. And also could lead to people researching in areas that no one's looking in right now. So if we find some potential choke points, then those are areas that could be researched, and researchers could jump in there and look for evidence. And if evidence was found, that would be interesting. That would lead towards knowledge. And if no evidence was found, I think that would be equally interesting. It's a result based on an idea where people ended up looking in places they never thought to before. So that's why I think the actual topic is important. And I'd like to see this discussion spread to other shows, even bigger shows. It's okay. I'm not going to be like, oh, you guys are ripping me off, or that show's copying me. Because no, I want you to talk about it with other people who maybe I don't know, or who may not be on here tonight, if anyone comes on here, because I would like somebody to bounce off of at some point. I'm not trying to make this a Pat Turner presentation. I have my initial thoughts and that's it. But I actually want a much bigger discussion to be had about this idea. Are they trapped in Florida or not? And why? So I disagree with that, Donald. I totally disagree with that, dude. They have a habitat. They have the kind of, they don't go wandering around in the middle of fields. Oh yeah, and this is Alex is going to Florida, and I'll invite you in, Alex, in about 15 minutes or so, if you want to come in. Yeah, I could do that. And we could talk about Florida too, but I'm real curious about this. Just the idea of, are they trapped in Florida or not? Because I mean, it's got to be one of the two, even if it's they have no motivation to leave. Okay, then maybe that's not trapped. But yeah, here we go. Let's kick off the discussion. I'll give some initial thoughts. If this, hopefully this will pull up this tab. Oh boy. I'm gonna have to go find it now. Not Chrome tab, window, United States. Share, boom, there it is. Okay, so it should be there. All right, so there we go. There is the beautiful state of Florida. And the beautiful state of Georgia. Oh, and you guys, you know what? This whole thing with my glasses that I changed is probably hurting, keeping you guys from seeing this real well. And so I know there's a lot of clutter on the screen, and that's sort of by design. Can I make this a little bit? Okay. Sort of by design. Just because I wanted to be able to showcase just how much of a web this is. But hey, you go down to Florida. This is interesting area to me as far as Florida goes. There's a lot of, and you got to remember down here in Florida, this like a lot of this green stuff is way thicker than most everything in Georgia. Even that Georgia can get thick, but Georgia thins out. Actually, will thin out in the winter. And southern Georgia isn't very thick at all, even though it might look it. But the greenness you see here is just, I mean, that is Florida jungle thick, man. Pretty much all year long. And then, of course, we go all the way down here, and you got just craziness going on. So, interesting areas in Florida where they might be. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a stretch for, even these areas and this, this that leads into the Okefenokee. I mean, that's all vast, thick, remote stuff. And my question basically is, what do they do when they get here? What do they do? Where do they go? And I know, like, some people looking at this map right now will already start picking out some what appears to be green belts, and some of them are. But at the same time, I'm also looking at all this farmland. Like, this is and this is all flat. It's very, very flat. These are the coastal plains. So, I mean, it's just flat. And some of these green belts aren't quite what they may look like. I mean, we've got one right here. Oops, it's screwing up already. Great. There's a river and a very, what I'd say, thin green belt around that river that is just bordered completely by people and farmland. Also, another thing to consider, and I already did the math on this, and I just punched it in. Okay, what it would take me to walk. What it would take me to walk from Gainesville. Oops. Oh, oops. How about click on Macon or something? Did that stick up there? No. Okay, cool. From Gainesville to Savannah, and that's 3.5 days. 3.5 days on a wide open highway. Right, so not through the woods, but how this is going to calculate it is 3.5 days to walk down a highway to get there, and that's walking the whole time. So you have to actually calculate for at least 8-hour breaks every day, and so that adds another 2.5 days, or no, 2 days, to make it 5.5 actual days, 3.5 of that being travel time. So to bus out of Florida through this state, even a Sasquatch, I don't care if they walk a mile or two an hour more comfortably than we do, the fact that they're not walking the highway the whole time, that they're actually having to go through some kind of terrain, some kind of brush, some kind of canopy, trees, whatever. Let's just say 5.5 days to get up here to the safety of the Appalachians. And again, one of my questions is, well, how do they know that? How do they know that up here would be safety? I'm not sure. Not sure how anybody answers that question without saying there's some kind of spoken knowledge between between themselves, which would have to mean that this happens on somewhat of a regular basis, whatever that is, right? But without any kind of knowledge, then you're trying to bust out of Florida to where? Like, you have no idea what you're even trying to get to. Like, there's no way they could ever know. Um, you know, like, my instincts tell me that to get to the up here to the top of the Okefenokee Swamp, even to explore through that area and get up here, as soon as they hit Waycross, they're done. I mean, they're just not going any further. They're just like on the outskirts, right? Maybe, and that's another reason why we do see them close to towns, is because they have a good bug out area to go back to. And they come across a town they didn't know was there. Like, they're back here, they have no idea that this is ahead of them. They hit that, man, they're out. Why would they keep going into like uh areas that are like just not advantageous for them at all? Like, this just isn't where they're at. Like, this isn't where they're ever seen, right? So we'll get back to that. I'll come back to the map. I'll leave it here for now. See, I'll hide it. Boom, there it goes. Okay. Or no, I guess I didn't hide it. Or maybe I did. Stop screen. How about that? So, Donald, why are you being like, you're starting to get into troll territory, man. So that leads us to this. Reports. Let's might help to share the screen. Reports. Here we go. Now, I am pulling this off the BFRO because to me, that's really, whatever you think about the BFRO, it is the largest database that I can find, even though it is not perfect, because there's some screwed up stuff here already with this this map right here of reports. It's leaving out some pretty heavy counties where there were reports that are listed right here, and the biggest one being White County, where there's 11 reports, the most in Georgia on the BFRO site. And White County is right here, just one county north of me. And that's where the mountains are. That's where the mountains start, is up here. And there's 11 BFR reports. Nothing else in Georgia even comes close. And so they don't have it highlighted, so it's kind of screwed up. This report in Gwinnett, like, no, like, definitely not. I'm not buying some of this stuff either. So, oh yeah, in Richmond County, no way. Like, that's absurd. So we come down to some of the lower reports in the states. Okay, this is like right there in that sort of remote area that borders Florida. This I don't understand. It's 2 reports. But see, these one-offs like this, that's one report. And that's not good enough for me. Just one report could mean a lot of things. Maybe a Bigfoot got busted there. Maybe somebody's making it up. Maybe it's a misidentification. But even like Long County, I don't know, man. That's tough to buy. So even given this, I'm saying this one over here, this is BS near Augusta. Like, no way. Gwinnett, nope, no way. that's just absolute crap. But other than that, this stuff, maybe. Some of this I could see, especially Bartow and Cherokee and so on. Because now we're up here in the safety of the mountains. There's lots of places for them to be. There's remote areas. But look at all this. Nothing. Like, this is all nothingness they would have to work their way through. Not to mention 3 major interstates. I-20 that goes east to west. I-85 that goes like this. I-75 that goes like this. 3 major interstates. Those are big crossings. So that's sort of my case for why my instinct tells me that there's just really no good way out. And some would say, well, I stopped sharing, didn't I? Okay. Hold on, let me see if I can bring the other one back real quick. Because the Savannah River is yeah, well, Matt, I've spent a lot of time in all of Georgia, including South Georgia. I know what that area is like. It's flat and wide open. And the trees that are down there are Georgia pines. And the way a lot of those pines are regrowth. So they were purposely planted. And there's nothing there. There's nothing on the ground. You walk through a pine forest down in South Georgia, like, you can't hide. No, there ain't no Bigfoot that can hide from anything in those pine forests. It's just not a lot of undergrowth. And so yeah, I'm actually speaking also from knowledge of being in that area. And I'm also using the maps to show where the best cover would be. And those greenways either run out or they run into major cities like Atlanta. Oh, by the way, that's the other thing. Atlanta, Georgia, which is this big on the state. There's 5 million people that live in Atlanta, Georgia, and surrounding area. There's 8 million people that live in Georgia. So you ain't getting nowhere near that 5 million population. I mean, to me, that's another absurd sort of thing. Like, you're not going through it. You're not even skirting it by 20 miles. So yeah. So I'm not just talking from like looking at the maps. My opinion is based on my actual time in South Georgia. I've been there many, many times. And it's flat and wide open. It's nothing you would ever think in your mind to ever associate with Bigfoot. It's the coastal plains, man. So, but I still think it's an interesting discussion. I appreciate any kind of opinions like Matt brought up, or even more points, because I'm just trying to understand again, like, if there's a reasonable path. Well, if we know what that path is, somebody can go research there, right? Okay, you bring up a good point. The answer to that is basically this: they're bears. They're not Sasquatch. They're known animals. And yes, the wildlife, the Chattahoochee is a natural, very natural greenbelt for bears who are wanting to like explore, or they get kicked out of an area by a bigger male, whatever. They'll come down that Chattahoochee and can work their way around Lake Lanier and get into the cities, or get close to the cities. I think there was a bear. There was one time a bear got inside the perimeter. It got inside 285. Again, the Chattahoochee is how it did that. and deer. That's why they're deer in Buckhead, like Buckhead, man. If you know anything, I mean, we're talking like the financial district center, like just as city as it gets. But the Chattahoochee runs through next to Buckhead, and there are deer there. Like one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in my life, I saw, ironically, in Buckhead. So and again, we're talking about bears, known animals. So a Sasquatch would never do that. No, no, they don't. Nope. You have no idea how large of an area. It's an area that 5 million people live in. I mean, I'll show you guys what Atlanta looks like compared to the rest of the state. It's basically this. I mean, it takes about an hour and 15 minutes with no traffic to drive from one side of the greater Atlanta area of 5 million people to the other. So it's huge. It's not just this little, that's not Atlanta. This is Atlanta. I'll zoom in. Like, see all this. This is Atlanta, Georgia, or the greater Atlanta area. This is where those 5 million people live. So, anyway, just stop sharing, I think. Wait, I didn't even bring it up. I'm sitting here doing it for nothing. Jeez, I just did that whole presentation for nothing. Anyway, this. Nah, man. There's nothing like that, dude. Mm-mm. Not even close. Nothing natural. We don't even have we don't really have caves in Georgia, even up in the mountains. Okay, yeah, that's okay. That's in the very heart of downtown Atlanta, dude. Like, so it's smack dab in the middle of those 5 million people. Like, I'm not getting into like crazy stuff here. Like, nothing ridiculous. I'm actually trying to figure out, man, are they trapped in Florida or not? Because again, if that discussion leads to more discussion, and then somehow there's sort of a consensus formed or understanding that maybe they are, likely they are, whatever that is, that's to me, that's an important thing to understand. It's an important statement to make. Yeah, in Georgia, yes, it is. It doesn't exist, bro. Yeah, that's not a thing here. Trust me, I understand the geology of the state. I've lived it my whole life. Now you go up to Kentucky, and there's a lot of cave systems, but not in the cities. They don't go under the cities, even up there. Um, true, truth. All right, so just going on and on here. What's up? And others. Oh, come on. Ugh. And well, why not? course I will. Why wouldn't I? All right. Sorry, guys. Got distracted. Maybe, Jay. Now that's possible. Yes, I can. How far back, Barb? No, I can't catch everything, especially when I got the screen. No. There's no solid information on that, Barb. I wish we could, if we could observe them for long periods of time, that's the kind of information that would be yielded. So, cool. Now I got somebody to bounce off of. Alex.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Welcome to the show. How you doing, bud?
Good. Just taking a little break here from editing. I'm starting to go a little crazy. I've had 2 hard drives crap out on me in the past few days. So
Oh, really?
I'm almost done with the project here, and it's just there's some corrupted files. It's so this is a well-deserved break, I might add.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I saw on your show, the notification popped up, and I was like, oh, cool. So I started listening, I think, right when you were talking about Florida. And as you know, I've been talking to you kind of behind the scenes about Georgia as well.
Mm-hmm.
Been talking to Matt too. I actually just had a guy on my show last night, Robert Robinson, who's a Florida-based kind of researcher, does some skunk cave stuff. So I was bouncing some ideas off him too. I've got a lot of ideas about Florida. I've been really looking into the Florida stuff lately as well. Definitely interesting.
Have you ever been there before?
I have, yeah. I've been to Florida growing up. The typical kind of Florida Disneyland sort of stuff. The only time I've actually gone into wilderness areas in Florida was last January. Did a road trip down there with my girlfriend, and we went camping actually in Ocala National Forest, which I've come to really love. It is an incredible area. It's a side of Florida that you just don't understand. People don't understand unless they've been there.
Right.
Let me put it that way, because it's actually funny. The top Google result or the top YouTube result is a video I did on it, where it was just like me basically camping and cooking pasta and doing drone shots of the forest. But people think of Florida as Tampa, as Miami, as Orlando.
Yeah,
it's
right.
So much more. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a ton of thoughts. So if you want me, I can just do like a 2-minute little monologue kind of thing with some ideas lately, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, sure. Go for it, man.
Okay. So here's what I've been thinking lately. So I've been studying topo maps, which for Florida is obviously kind of funny because it's pretty flat, but something that's kind of interesting. And I've been talking to dudes that do GIS stuff. So mapping, there's a bunch of these different, there's an account called Squatchermetrics. I don't know if he has a YouTube, but he's got an Instagram. There's a couple other people. There's a Bigfoot mapping project, some other folks that are basically taking data from different organizations, BFRO, as imperfect as they are, they're using that sort of stuff and plotting them on a map in terms of sightings, and using other maps from like the USGS, from NOAA, other sources, the wildlife commissions in like the state of Florida or Georgia or other states, right? And they're kind of mapping to see if there's corridors for animals. So when it comes to Florida, I look at it, you see the Everglades. The Everglades and Big Cypress Preserve is one of the largest wilderness areas east of the Rockies. It's unbelievable. The thing is, a lot of it is wet. Most of the year, there's a couple of inches of water, if not more, in certain spots. So this is kind of the dry season now. So if these things are living down in an area like the Everglades, I think that, and this is just me completely speculating, it seems as if there is probably enough resources to sustain at least a few of these things in an area like that. I mean, you've got so much other wildlife, and I'll jump on a Florida panther kind of point as well, which I think is important when paralleling with the Bigfoot stuff in general.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we have like, the mountain lion stuff I've been into on the East Coast. Obviously, it's very controversial. A lot of it's misidentifications. There are legit sightings, but Florida, we have a resident population that's established that they've been trying to grow, and those things are all over the place. It's hard to predict where they are in some instances. So I think it parallels. But I think the Everglades, if you look at that area, it's just so massive that I don't think a few of these things would have a problem with staying in an area like that. And then comes that question of, are they trapped in that area? So you look at the central northern Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So people talk about the green swamp a lot. And I know Matt has, talked about it a little bit as well. And I've been talking to him about, Ocala, that sort of area.
Yeah.
That area is surrounded by Tampa. You've got Orlando. You've got that whole central area where seems to be a lot of people. But then you get to Ocala and northwards. I think if there are Sasquatch in those areas, I mean, they wouldn't have a problem moving between those areas. There's corridors. There seems to be wildlife corridors that the other known animals use, like the panthers and certainly you've got other resident animals, lots of hogs, deer, that sort of stuff, tons of bears in some of these areas. But I thought it was really cool when you were talking about that South Georgia area, because we've also been looking at specifically the Osceola National Forest in northern Florida, which borders the Okefenokee Swamp, which is a large area. So there are reports. I've read recent reports as of a few years ago from like the Osceola area. So this is actually a big point before I forget about Florida is the population, the human population, right? So 100 years ago, Florida had, I guess, less than 1 million people. And now it's one of the most populated states in the U.S. We're talking like 20 million, I believe, 23 million. Mm-hmm. Someone can fact check me on that. That being said, most of that population has grown on the coast, not necessarily in those central areas, except for places like Orlando, Oakland, or not Oakland, Lakeland. Yeah. So you do have those pockets. Like I was amazed in Ocala last winter going in there. We never really ran into people except for hunters in a camp, because we stayed in a campground. Then we drove off into this other area and didn't really see people until we hit a dirt road. And it's a massive area. They do Navy bombing in that area in Ocala. So in terms of being a corridor or a place to live, I think a place like Ocala could also probably support a few of these things. And then when you get to the Panhandle, that's a different ball game. You have the Apalachicola National Forest, all those other areas that connect into those states in those areas. So I think that's a different story. But
and that's huge. That's just a whole bunch of nothing. It looks like to me, dude.
It's incredible. What I'll do is I'll go on Google Earth a lot of the times and just look at the little forest roads that lead into nowhere, and just kind of map out how much forest you sort of have where there's no roads or anything that's visible on satellite in between. And the possibilities are endless. Obviously you've got a lot of water, and what you mentioned about Florida, the environment there is totally, it's a subtropical. I mean, it's parts of it are tropical. The Everglades is called the Amazon of North America. Now, in my view, it seems like what I've seen so far, and I've been doing like every single day, spending an hour or two when I'm supposed to be doing other work, looking at these areas. You have, just this incredible amount of space out there. That being said, there are a lot of people in Florida, as I mentioned, but that's sort of my rambling on a little bit.
But they do. I mean, you're right, dude. They go to Florida for the water, or to be near the water for the most part, right. or like maybe like some cool job at Disneyland.
Well, that's actually something I learned even last night from my guest, from Robert Robinson. He said that so Disney and I guess Universal, they own very large tracts of forest land right abutting the green swamp. And the reason they do that is there's some sort of law on the books in Florida where if Disney buys land, they have to buy the same amount of acreage that's forest or swamp and keep that preserved. So that's not for no development. Because in Florida, they're really trying to balance that development to wilderness ratio. Because you can look in places like Lakeland or even down in the Miami area, people's backyards are legit just swamped with gators and panthers. And going back to the panthers, go to Florida Wildlife Commission website. They have a panther tracker where they'll post confirmed sightings in the forms of tracks as well as people's trail cameras. And you've got sightings in practically almost downtown Naples, in little green belts going through people's yards, eating people's cats, other animals.
Down in Naples, really?
Yes. So the largest,
the
most of the sightings for the panther are actually in that western part of the Everglades. So there's those Fakahatchee Strand. That is a huge hot spot. And then basically right into Naples. And like I said, go to the Florida Wildlife Commission website, check out that tracker. It's incredible.
Now, when you say panthers, are you talking about mountain lions?
Yeah, so we're talking about
Yeah.
specifically the Florida panther, which is a recognized subspecies of Puma concolor, or the mountain lion, the cougar, catamount, whatever it's regionally called. So it's the same as, if I was in Colorado and I saw mountain lion, it's the same species, but they have different adaptations. So they've actually taken
Gotcha.
genetically the most similar to the Florida panther population, which is highly endangered. There's probably only a few hundred according to the estimates. There's a population in Texas. So what they did was they took a bunch of the Texas animals and put them in Florida for the sake of trying to boost the population. And a lot of them died. They did manage to produce offspring, but some of them were taken back into captivity. So that's a whole other kind of story. Am I losing you here?
Hopefully not. You got me.
Is it on my end?
No.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm probably trying to do too much with the computer sharing stuff. Which I'm about to share another one. Let's see, this one. Matt just sent this to me, actually. That's a good.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a good way to see people is up, of course, at night from space. Yeah.
And yeah, you see Orlando is that big, giant one in the middle up in that area. That's a massive area. But then you got to realize north of the Everglades is Lake Okeechobee. So that's not, that's it's dark because it's a big lake.
Yeah.
So it's, right. But you do see that there are corridors, and I mean, things like panthers are moving around in these areas and are often found in people's yards in pretty urban areas. And
yeah, and it's thick there. It's thick.
I mean, I'm not of the opinion that Sasquatch are necessarily migratory in the sense that they would go from like the Everglades to North Georgia. That might be a little, that just seems kind of crazy. I mean, if you're living in an area, if you're adapted to that area, why would you move so far? I mean, I don't know if people actually believe that. That's like probably just,
I don't know. It's come up in casual conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
And people seem to just, I don't want to say knee jerk. I'm not trying to be offensive, but they'll just opine on it like real simple, one way or the other.
No. And like, I mean, I struggle with it too, because I look at a place like Florida and you see how not only is the population typically has grown because a lot of people retire down there. I mean, because of the weather, obviously. Mm-hmm. You've got a lot of people moving there now for other reasons. Just in general, they're getting a lot. And you can talk to anyone in Florida, they'll tell you, yeah, we're getting people by the busload every day,
right?
If not more.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of factors to think about there.
Yeah, there are.
I want to say this is a little bit of a thought experiment. So, I mean, I'm not saying any dates or when we're going, but we are doing multiple kind of film/expeditions in Florida this upcoming year. And I mean, those involved know when that kind of stuff is going on, but we're doing basically a lot of the spots in Florida and the Okefenokee Swamp area, as well as the Panhandle and North Georgia. So your neck of the woods. We've talked about that, obviously. Those environments, how different they are and everything. So
incredibly,
yeah. So thought experiment, this is just my thoughts from looking at it online, having only basically a little bit of time spent in Ocala. Haven't been to Everglades since I was, 5 years old. So I have really no idea of what it's like. So I'd be really curious to see what my opinions are after having spent time on the ground there. And talking to researchers and talking to eyewitnesses and that sort of thing that we typically kind of try to do with these sort of productions that we do.
Yeah.
So I could totally change. I mean, I was almost thinking at first that a place like the Everglades, it seems like maybe skunk apes in the past were more present there, or Bigfoots or whatever, skunk apes, Bigfoots. And now that there's less of them, it seems like there's a lot of historical sightings. But as Miami kept on pushing out in the swamp, I mean, it's still a massive area. But maybe there's less there. Maybe there's a few. Maybe there's a lot. I don't know. And maybe there's not at all. Because it's a very wet environment. As in, like I said, you're walking in water most of the time, even now during the dry season.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just a lot to think about there.
There is, and I can't remember who said it. Alex, maybe I think it was either Bindernagel or I think it was Bindernagel, but it may have been Renee DeHinden. pretty sure it was one of those two guys that said a long time ago, like decades ago, it's like, yep, they're in Florida, but they're on the verge of going extinct, was his opinion.
Right.
Something along those lines, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean it's certainly that's something that was brought up last night on my show as well. I guess it was John Green had written that, there's no way Bigfoots could be in Florida. And, he's someone that's obviously in Canada and the Pacific Northwest and probably the best habitat for these things out there, aside from the Appalachians and parts of Canada, the eastern parts. And there was a researcher that he was mentioning that was down there that invited John Green out there. He went down there and it kind of changed his mind. And this would have been probably in the I guess in the 80s or the 90s. So
really?
Florida's population right now is 21.48 million as of 2019. Probably grown since then.
You were damn close.
Yeah, because and that was the guess. It's because I've been looking at the stats lately, so I'm not like a mind reader. But you look at, what is it, 1920? The population of Florida was about 40,000 shy of a million.
Wow.
So that is an insane amount of growth in just 100 years, because we're looking at 1920 to basically 2020 at this point.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I think people need to look at more in terms of Bigfoot. Just what is the human effect really there? Because, we do have these amazing untouched wild areas like British Columbia, as I was mentioning. I don't think anyone can really contest that there's good habitat for something like this to exist there.
Right.
Unmolested by humans for the most part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then you get into the eastern part of the U.S. I mean, I'm working on this project now about eastern Ohio, which is an area that has a long history of sightings, and it still kind of confuses me as to why, because you don't have these massive wilderness areas. There's sort of small patches of woods that lead into national forests and that sort of stuff. So it's strange.
This whole sort of thought experiment that I started kicking off in my head today to sort of prepare for the show, actually, I kind of stumbled upon something by accident that I had never really considered before, which is when I started thinking about Florida, and I started thinking like, well, how would they even know if they decided to move north? How would they even know what they were getting into?
Yeah.
And then that made me realize I started thinking about like some of the encounters that we've heard that seem fairly like compelling, let's say, that happen on maybe somewhere on the outskirts of a town, or maybe even a small city. It just got my brain kicking about, well, if a Bigfoot's 20 miles away from that town, and that town's just on the other side of a small ridge top, well, that they don't know it's there. And so they might just run dead smack into it being on the move.
Right.
For whatever reason, right?
Well, that kind of gets into, what these things could be. I mean, you think about, okay, there's certain animals that have certain instinctual behaviors that have just been ingrained. I think this is like a totally random example, but monarch butterflies, they do this migration in the Atlantic Ocean. And for some reason, they've been documented as just taking this kind of U-turn a few miles out of the way for no apparent reason. And that's because there was, I guess, millions of years ago, there was some sort of volcano or something there. And now it's the ocean. Something along those lines. I know I read this for sure somewhere, but apparently it's ingrained in them, and they still do it for some strange reason. It's kind of an instinctual thing.
Huh.
Yeah, Chewy's awesome. But
so you met Chewy. I want to meet Chewy.
I did.
Chewy?
We went hiking. Yeah, I took him up to one of my favorite hikes up here in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, which is the northern part of the Appalachians, which is also excellent Sasquatch habitat. But so when you get into Bigfoot, like, is there some sort of a knowledge that's passed down? Do they have meetings with clans or whatever? If you really want to get into the kooky stuff, or do you maybe have more looking in line with primates? Are there lone males that once they kind of get kicked out of a family group, they're going off to do their own thing? So they're wandering around. They maybe bump into some towns, kind of doing their thing until they find a viable, mate or something like that. I don't know. I mean, because we just know so little about what these things are and their behaviors. And I mean,
well, it just kind of connected some dots for me in my head of why people would spot them around even like rural towns here and there. Never, except for a few there. I'm sure there's exceptions where people want to, say habituations happening. I don't know. Maybe not. But for the most part, it just seems to be like some encounter happened and it's fairly compelling. But then no one ever saw one around there for 20 years.
Yeah. And I've read a lot of reports like that where it's that sort of one-off incident. I mean, a couple towns over from me where I grew up in southern New Hampshire, there was an encounter that happened in the 1970s called the Hollis Flea Monster. And it was seen by a few people that night. It created this kind of media hysteria kind of thing going on. I've now actually talked to a guy who was in MUFON who investigated, who thought that the primary witness was kind of unreliable. So that's changed my opinion on that case. But there are other stories like the Durham gorilla in Maine, where it was just a few sightings, and then there's been no other sightings since, before or after, at least it's known. So is that just an animal moving through an area, just passing through? Or is it a migratory thing, moving from what I mean, you think there'd be more sightings if that was the case, it was migratory or some sort of seasonal thing.
Right.
But it really gets the mind thinking, because, up here in New Hampshire, we just have so much woods that these things could be pretty much anywhere. And there are a lot of rural properties and places where people do have, supposed activity, or they'll get sightings in certain areas, but it's hard to predict kind of clusters. Whereas I feel like if you look at an area like Florida, you pretty much have to work with those areas like the Everglades, which is an extreme. I mean, to put it into perspective, the Everglades is larger than the state of Rhode Island.
Oh yeah.
Like you can drive from from Boston to, Rhode Island, the coast, and that's basically the Everglades is kind of encapsulated in that area.
In that distance, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. It's actually hard to believe, but
it's huge.
Oh, that's a cool comment from Pine Island. It says, I've spent time in the White Mountains. My uncle managed the Mount Washington Hotel for years. Oh boy. I wonder if he has any ghost stories. That place is supposedly super haunted. All the ghost people love that place.
Is that in the Northeast?
Yeah, that's the Mount Washington Hotel. It's the big one that's kind of it's pretty famous. A lot of people think it's the Shining Hotel. It gets mistaken for that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually, if you've seen the Finding Bigfoot episode where they're in New Hampshire, they stayed at that hotel. They named the episode like Grand Old Hotel or something like that. So there's supposedly been Bigfoot activity right around, because it's all national forest. And
right.
Yeah, Brian and Chewy says over 80% forested in New Hampshire. Yeah, it's the second most forested state in the country. So after Maine, but I don't want to go on a Northeast tangent. I'm sure we could talk about that all night too, but
oh no, I mean, it's okay, man. Either way, man, it's a free for all tonight. So I just wanted to kick that off, and I mean, just kind of think about that and and hopefully get the ball rolling, get a bigger discussion happening about, because I think it would be important to understand if that's a barrier or not,
right.
And
that was kind of what I was thinking with my thought experiment. And I'd be happy to talk about this maybe next year after we've done all this kind of gallivanting around Florida.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm
saying.
This
is just me, what I've been looking at online, and looking on the internet, you can learn stuff, but you can't get the feeling of what it's like when you're actually there. Like a guy like Matt, who's down there, he's out in the swamp. So
yes, he is. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey guys, welcome.
What's going on?
Well, I Pat and I, I'll random bomb him in text, and I started this. There's no Bigfoot in Georgia thing, and the more we joked and started, then it turned into a meme war, and then it turned back into so. I didn't realize I was really good at that, but actually those things can go on and on
and on and on and on.
And Pat introduced me to that, but this all started out as a joke, and then it turned into a serious discussion. And I think Flyaway had it right. He said, "Look at the night maps."
Yeah,
But I will tell you, and someone else mentioned there were not any corridors, and man, I respectfully disagree with that, because
me too.
Even in an area by me in Hillsborough County, coming out of Tampa, and you go into Hillsborough County into Pasco, we have a preserve there where, you know, wildlife photographer was shooting a preserve right where 275 and 75 come together. It's literally, was it Cypress something preserve right there. 275 and I-75 come together. First class sighting right there, logged. I've been in there with the Bigfoot Mafia. That place is insane, awfully wet. We saw a lot of good forest language. Go ahead.
To be clear, I wasn't questioning any movement within the state of Florida or corridors in Florida at all, because Florida's a thick damn place. I was just talking about the journey through the more thin coastal plains of Georgia. But so just to be clear, I want you to say I'm not questioning Florida.
No, and I was responding to someone in chat about the corridors.
Okay.
But my transition to kayak happened naturally by being out there and seeing that. I looked at the maps like you did, Pat. I looked at the maps and said, wow, so there really only could be in 2 places, you know, or 3. And then I started looking at it. But when you get out there and when you get in these swamps, and there's an area called Hillsborough River State Park going up into Pasco, and then it shoots across, and then it all connects to the Green Swamp and Colt Creek. And it's literally a corridor from 18 miles from my house that goes 38 miles straight northeast, where a lot of Bigfoot groups are hitting in the Green Swamp. There's areas where that corridor goes down to the river, and it looks like a pencil on a map. And you go, well, they can't pass that. Go walk in those areas. It's a mile or 2 miles on each side, but it is a crazy mile and 2 miles on each side. And there's a lot of those places where, you know, people just haven't been.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially
it's not where hikers go. You don't go in the swamp to mess with gators and crocodiles and that sort of thing. So that was my transition to kayak, was thinking, what if I could get off the trails and just move off the trails into these waterways where, you'll go by, you know, river homes and people that live on the river and all this stuff. But man, a quarter mile, half mile past that, you're into no man's land. You're into Greenway, and you may be an area where there are no traditional hiking trails that people would go on. So I just wanted to get off of those parks and state parks that we've been going to and preserves, and move into these areas where, you know, follow the river sort of thing. And my background's archaeology, and I studied Florida archaeology, and everything was built, life sustained along the river corridors. It always has, and it always will. And you got to realize Florida coastline extends out miles from where it used to be, and the oceans are rising. But you can look at like what you have here, you can see the shelf, and it may go out a mile or 2, and you can actually see the river still out in the Gulf as it goes out, where it opened up into the Gulf back then. And so I was talking to some mutual friends. Yeah. I was talking to some mutual friends, and what I need to do is go back to my roots and go back to the anthropological and archaeological studies and look at where these, I think there were 3 tribes primarily in Florida. And God, it's been 30 years. I probably couldn't name them, but they're predominantly southern, central.
Seminole, Miccosukee.
Seminole was center, yeah. And then you had the
Miccosukee were like, I think, a part of the Seminole. I'm not sure.
There was a Tecumseh or something like that. Anyway, I obviously
Tecumseh was a chief, I think.
He was the chief.
It was I was talking about it yesterday to someone, and it just totally escapes me. But there's basically 3 major tribes in what was going on. And of course, you know, the whole Spanish coming over, and, you know, all the movies that were filmed in Florida, the Norsemen and all that. It goes way, way back. and the disease, and the first settlement was, up in Jacksonville, St. Augustine. So there's a lot of history, guys, that go way, way back. And so I'm kind of way behind Alex here in researching my own area to the depth that he has.
I love to go ahead in, but I just wanted to say, Pat,
Yeah.
I sent you a couple maps from this guy, and I had to rip him off Instagram right now, but because his website's all messed up. But he's sending me some of these maps. But there's two maps. One is a sort of Bigfoot hub and highway in the southeast, and then you've got the conservation areas, and they're pretty interesting. I don't know if you're able to open them or not, but
I see one. That one doesn't matter.
Guys, and Alex, you may want to check into this. I know the curator over at the History Museum here out of Tampa.
Oh, really? Okay.
And he's all about, they have a whole collection of the early Florida maps going way back. That
sounds so amazing.
Where it didn't even look like Florida. So we can get in there and look at those maps. I'm not sure if he has them online, but we can definitely have a conversation with him. And this guy is, he would go on camera for sure. But he could easily talk about Florida and the mapping and the coastline and what has changed. And that's kind of what I'm into, because there's going to be an overlap of time of where these settlements were and what's happening now. And I think it was Mike that was telling me that. He goes, where your little 15 minutes of fame happened, Matt, what happened, what was there, 50, 100, 200 years ago? And I stupidly I don't know. I'm just out looking for Sasquatch, so new into this. I'm not really being the researcher I want to be, but that was a whole part of me stepping back and realizing, okay, I'm going out so much, I need to slow down and do the background work and find out what's really going on. So not meaning to get off on a diatribe, but I think the night stuff is really cool.
No, that I think it's an awesome point. And
it is. I mean, it shows you where the people are. Obviously, the majority of people, but it doesn't show you what if you look at the satellite maps, you can actually look at all the wide open farmland that you don't see at night. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think these things would probably, in some instances, like I'm thinking now of Ohio, where there's forests that connect to forests, and you have to cross maybe a farmer's field. But at night, when there's nobody out there, other animals do it all the time, the deer and the coyotes and everything. But when you're talking about areas that are miles and miles of just farmland with very little trees, I mean, that would be a stretch to say something the size of a Sasquatch could probably pull that off easily. I also have trouble with that. But so I don't know if I don't have the data points for the map, but I believe that the green are supposed sightings that are a compilation of different databases, like the BFRO and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that the yellow there, or the goldish color, is either drainage areas, rivers, and national forest and state park kind of stuff.
It's all, well, a lot of these are waterways, and they're mixed. The yellow and the pink and orange is kind of mixed together in waterways.
And I got to get the data from the guy, but he's a GIS guy, and
I mean, I'll take it. I mean, I'm already looking at it going, there's some things here very, very wrong right here, right in the middle of Augusta, Georgia.
Well, see, that's the thing.
Somewhere near it, which is basically the second largest city outside of Atlanta municipality that exists in Georgia. And I grew up there. There's no freaking Bigfoot that's ever been seen.
Yeah, that's the problem with the databases, right? Is that you're relying on what's in a database. I mean, we don't know what that particular BFRO investigator, what their background is. Are they a really trusting person? Do they just trust what this witness told them, and then it enters the database because you have different characters
sometimes?
Yes, and there are great researchers in the BFRO, and there's issues obviously I think with that, but there does seem to be sort of public database and a private one. So I don't know what other data you'd be able to glean from that.
It's like Matt, Matt Pruitt, not Check the Tape Matt, but Matt Pruitt, who we both know and trust greatly. Matt's going to do his job. If he's when he's doing a BFRO report, right? Well, it just so happens, dude, he took one 2 miles down the road from here. You know, he took that report several years ago, but what happened to the guy happened in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
So I can understand it. Not today, no way. But
right.
But 40, 50 years ago, yeah, sure. And
see,
it's a fascinating report, dude. This guy was a kid. He saw this thing three times or maybe at least twice over a 3-day period. And Matt took that report. And I mean, I know Matt would have asked all the right questions, you know.
Yeah, he actually told me about one of the most interesting New Hampshire Bigfoot stories from a while ago. I met him actually at CryptidCon recently, and we got to talking about this. And he was saying it was a sighting of a hiker he was sleeping at a trailhead, and this thing came out and was wet or something, like it had just come out of the river. And it was a really interesting encounter. But he said he took it because nobody else had looked at it, because there weren't really any investigators up in that area at the time. I guess this was before finding Bigfoot. So the thing is, you have people like that. You have people who I would consider good researchers, but then I've met BFRO people that are complete on the woo side, or that are completely, their mindset. So then I wonder, when they take reports, does that perspective sort of influence the way they're getting reports in there?
I'd say it's a mix, because it became such a large organization for taking reports, and without like good leadership, because you're dealing with the US, right?
Yeah.
So, but my only point is like, you and I know guys like Matt Pruitt, who we trust 100%, solid dude, and there's other guys like that. So
Chris Noel is in the BFRO. I met him actually. He hosted a town hall. So after finding Bigfoot was off air, he hosted a town hall meeting in New Hampshire, even though he's from Vermont, with BFRO town hall, because they were doing them across the country. That's actually where I met Chris Noel, and this was like 2015, 16 maybe. So there's obviously like I said, I think it's fair to say it's probably a mixed bag.
It is, and it just seemed at one point anybody could, use the right language to get into a BFRO investigator.
Well, I met people who met Matt Moneymaker at the town halls on finding Bigfoot, and basically after a conversation, they were like, "Hey, you want to become a member?"
Right.
It was like pretty informal, and I don't. Whatever, is that wrong or not? I don't know. I mean,
it is what it is.
To be determined. Yeah.
I'm just don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No, for sure.
Every time that people attack the BFRO, I'm just like, nope. Like,
well, the woo people, I see a lot of it, because they're like, oh, they would filter out the woo reports, and you can't make everyone happy. It's just impossible, and you got to make peace with that.
I know all about that. What's up, Jeff? Welcome to the show.
What's up, Jeff?
Hey, Pat, Matt, and Alex. How are you guys?
Good. Tonight? How's it going?
Good, man.
So I was really interested in your Florida map that you just popped up, because I've got a similar one for Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, which you assume is all remote forest. But what's interesting is if you map out all the documented encounters over the last 40 to 50 years, and you start following not only the waterways, but the hunting pressured lands and the non-pressured lands. And it does, there's a lot of public forests and lands out there that just don't get hunting pressure. I mean, they to get into them takes so much work that most of the hunters are lazy. They don't really try to do that. And you start overlaying these things, and you realize that most of these encounters are the non-pressured areas that are easy to connect A to B to C to D. So, I mean, it's that Florida map that you're showing, and even all through Georgia and up through Alabama. It's interesting because it's not showing you just the waterways, but I used to live in Columbus, Georgia, when I was in the military, and the Chattahoochee River, there's parts of the Chattahoochee that feels like you're in an Amazon forest, because there's nothing there. And then there's other parts that run right through towns, and it's like there's nothing would ever be here, right? So it's interesting how you can assume you see a corridor pathway, but yet there's still tactical areas that would be hard to negotiate around.
Well, the Chattahoochee River runs straight through the middle of Atlanta, Georgia. So
Yeah.
it's right through 5 million people. There's no way.
I could see them
There's no
navigating
way.
it through the division of the Alabama Georgia border, let's say for the southern half of those states. But once you start getting midway up Georgia, you need to get off of that river to divert correctly around several cities leading into Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say it can't be done, but
we need someone to go out there and do it.
Well, yeah,
to literally say, can I walk it and be unseen? That would be a great film.
I think that's a great idea, because we have people that all the time will get, like up in Itasca, Minnesota, in my neighborhood, will launch a canoe or kayak, and they'll try to kayak the Mississippi all the way to the Gulf, right? And they do it all the time, 1,000 plus miles, and it's cool that people are trying to accomplish these tracks, let's say, but to approach it from the mindset of being elusive, to say, I'm going to start in South Central Florida, and I'm going to try to get to, let's say, the mountains in North Carolina. And I'm going to try to do it avoiding towns, crossing highways at very, heavily forested points, so you're not caught in open land, and just tactically what would be the best route to do it, and then just go do it. Even if it took you a month to do it.
I nominate
to
Patrick
see if
Vaughn.
you could do it.
I nominate Vaughn.
I second.
All right.
Because it's not just Florida. I look at like where Long Island Bigfoot is. You look at where he's at, and the hook that you'd have to negotiate to get around into where he's at. It's like I look at that on a map and say, there's no freaking way a Bigfoot could actually navigate into that area without having to go through seriously populated and open areas, right? But I'm not, it's too easy to say bullshit. There's no way it could do it. Right. I mean, I'm not going to do that until I go out and walk that for 2 weeks and say, could you do it or not? Because you can look at a map and say you couldn't do it.
But in the meantime, people can look at maps, and hopefully other shows can, like I said, like I don't care if another show does this topic. I'm not going to say you rip me off. I encourage it. I want other shows to talk to other people, and let's branch this discussion out, because I think it can lead somewhere. That's how things get done. That's how things get, like, not decided in this case, but where, again, just where we all bounce off each other and maybe come to like a better conclusion than we would just saying, they can skirt back and forth all they want. Or there's no way they could ever do that. Let's find the compromise based on good discussion.
Yeah, and here's just a random example. And Jeff, you might be more familiar with this area out in Utah. I don't know if you spent time in that sort of area, but this summer we were out in the high Uintas in Utah, which is an incredible part of the Rockies little mountain chain there. But we were up in Vernal, Utah, which is kind of the dinosaur capital of the U.S. That's sort of what they call it. That's where you have the Dinosaur National Monument. I mean, that's as deserty as you can get. We're in one of the history museums there, and they noticed one of us has a Bigfoot shirt on. I think my buddy Eli had like a Bigfoot logo. And this lady who worked in the museum came up to us and told us a story about her sister seeing a Bigfoot along the Green River in Utah, about 20 miles from Vernal. And I was like, in this area, are you kidding me? And then you look at pictures of the Green River, and there's a little green belt on either side of the river that's surrounded by deserts. And it kind of gets the mind wondering, was this, again, that sort of migratory pattern, lone male kind of thing going on? Is it possible? But I think Jeff brings up an awesome point in just getting out there and trying it. I mean, that's given me some ideas for some backpacking trips here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or
I'm
at
really
least investigating, like, find the best, like, sort of like, this could be a path, and go investigate that area. See if you find any evidence. Because here's the other thing. I'm not trying to say, can it be done or not? But if it is, how often?
Choke
and
point.
why?
Yeah.
So back to my questions. How often and why?
Well,
you know,
so we've got an area, you know, I'm in the northern Minnesota of the Pine Island Forest where I do a lot of work all the way up into Canada. I mean, it's just forest after forest. Where one forest ends, by definition, the next one begins. I mean, it's goes from federal to state to federal, and you know, the trees never stop. You know, it's just the outlines on the map do. But the southern third of Minnesota is solid farmland. Okay, much like the Dakotas, Nebraska, Iowa. Okay, and so you got the southern third of Minnesota, and then all of Iowa. I mean, a Bigfoot has no freaking business in the state of Iowa. It is all flat cornfields, bean fields, and hog farms. I mean, that's it. There's a few little river valleys and groves of trees here and there, but to get from one tree section to the next tree section, you've got to cover miles and miles. Okay, and yet there's sightings seen all the time in Iowa.
Right.
And it's like, what is going on there? And when you start recognizing the harsh, dense winter areas where I'm at in northern Minnesota and the Ozark mountain range that starts in Missouri, just on the southern border of Iowa. Okay, so to get from 0 degrees and 40-mile-an-hour winds to moderately fair temperatures throughout the winter in the Ozarks, you're only talking 450 miles, maybe, which seems like a lot, but you know, I mean, if you're moving, cover it in a few weeks, probably. Okay.
Yeah. Talk to people who do like the Appalachian Trail, and their bodies become insane, adapted to doing, you know, 15, 20 miles a day. And that's just humans.
Yeah.
Right?
And that, I would say that the range for, if you weren't held back by someone who's injured, by an individual who's injured, or young juveniles, that if you were between 7 and 10 foot tall, I don't care how much you weighed, with the stride you have, moving at a steady pace, with a decent calorie intake, you should be able to do 40 miles a day in a 24-hour period. Ooh. So when you say, oh, it's 450 miles, dude, that's 2 weeks. You know, I mean, so you think, well, you shouldn't be able to cross Iowa, right? Well, if you're moving at night and there's a whole lot of fields and just moving from tree grove to tree grove to tree grove, you're going to get there. You can get there. And there's a reason to want to get there if there's more forage and more tolerable temperatures versus, now I think that they exist year round in my area, but Doug, my partner Doug, really believes that there is a large percentage of them that migrate across into the Ozarks for 3-4 months a year. So why don't they all? I don't know. You know, it's the same thing with Canada geese. I see Canada geese a month ago were hauling their ass to Texas, and yet I've still got some of them sitting out here trying to get through the frozen lake in my backyard. Why don't they all just keep going, right? So
instinct, I don't know.
Yeah. But, you know, just like a lot of other animals that travel long distances, they travel the exact same long distances. I mean, it's like, it's ingrained. They know the route, you know, 100 yards to 100 yards to 100 yards. They don't deviate. That migration path, whether it's birds flying or animals on the ground, you see those same individuals coming through those pathways. And we know that when we tag waterfowl, they're traveling by instinct, and they're not deviating from that path year after year after year. So, I mean, I guess there's some assumption to be had that if a Bigfoot was to migrate and it figured out a safe route, it's always going to take that route. It's always going to duplicate that movement until it doesn't work to go that route.
Yeah, then you wonder, let's say a development pops up in between the route, you know, how does that affect the behavior? How does that change the trajectory? Would they have to find a way around, or would they just, I don't know, stay in that area?
That's
because if you get trapped, you know, you get trapped in like an area that's, you either have to go back or you can't stay in that area if there's not enough resources, right? I mean,
well, and it's a whole different mindset. I mean, we as humans, when we try to navigate A to B, we're looking at what's the easiest path. What's the path of least resistance? And that's really all we consider. Yeah. We don't really look at it and say, boy, if we travel by that convenience store, survivability declines, the risk versus reward. But when all you're trying to do is remain undetected and elusive, you'll go miles and miles and miles out of your way through, armpit deep swamps to not be detected. It's rarely the path of easiest resistance. It's usually the hardest.
So with a fugitive, let's say a fugitive would have that same motivation,
right?
But they would also need supplies. And so there I can project the same kind of thing onto Bigfoot. They would also need supplies. They would always need to be able to find fresh water. They would always need to be able to, I would think, eat, even though, I mean, I don't know. I can't say that for sure. Maybe they can go 2 weeks without eating. I don't know,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of factors. Again, I'm just opening the floor for discussion, and
right.
Maybe we can all learn something,
Yeah, but I don't see it as a question, are they trapped in Florida? I see it as, the same thing, the same reason why so many people have moved to Florida. You just talked about the growth of Florida. It's like, we really only have 2 seasons. Why leave? And I tell you, man, I would have never 2 years ago, if you told me what I've learned or what I picked up just from going out into these areas, that something could hide and not be detected, I would have said no way. And it's a different world when you're in a mile in a swamp off trail. It's mind-boggling that you stand there in awe and you go, holy crap, I never realized.
Right.
Especially when you throw a
there
drone
could be
out.
an army moving through there and people wouldn't know. I'm not kidding. There could be 12 guys, a squad, whatever's in a squad. Jeff, you commanded one. Was it 7, 8, 9? But you could move that way. And I tell you, you just got to look at it. I have a lot of it in my videos. You'll see it.
And that's pretty interesting, because there are groups that do survival training, that will do this sort of stuff. I know actually people not far from here that do this sort of thing, and people have reported their remnants of their debris shelters as Bigfoot structures, right? Yeah. That sort of thing. And I'm like saying, well, no, you could sign up. I can sign up and take a class, and they will take me to this area. And your goal is to stay away from people. You have that mindset. But I think choke points is a really interesting conversation, especially when it comes to Florida, Matt. I think we should totally do something, regarding that, because you look at those areas, like you're saying, the green spot, but even throwing a drone up above some of those areas, it's trees as far as you can see. I can't emphasize how much people probably don't know this if they've been to Florida and they've been to Tampa or Miami. Drive an hour outside, go to some of these areas. It's totally different. It's Florida like you've never seen before. And it was the first time I saw it last January. So I'm beyond ecstatic to be going back there and looking into some of those areas. But because there is only that finite amount of space, right? It's not like Minnesota or up here in New England where we've got millions of contiguous acres of woods that connect into Canada. There's a finite amount of space there. As big as the Everglades are, there's still a certain limit. So as human encroachment maybe comes in, or there's conservation land, are these things being pushed further in? Are they sticking in certain, because it's one of those things that I think it's so hard to kind of quantify that. I don't know exactly. I don't think I'm equipped to do that.
Well, a lot of times when it comes to research, I'm trying to establish what is happening. What I'm studying at that point, what is happening there. But it gets hard to speculate as to who, why, where, what are the reasons, all of that stuff. But when you try to do it, you really have to break down to some basic principles of understanding that although we don't really fully understand the communication between us and them, right? I mean, 2 wood knocks means whatever. I mean, that's pretty simple stuff. And we still don't all agree on that's what's going on, right? But you have to assume that Bigfoots can communicate with each other probably very fluently. Even if it's on an archaic basic ability, they've got to be able to communicate where they've been, what they've seen, what's over there versus what's over here. And if there are corridors and pathways established where they're traveling, you have to believe that if a Bigfoot was to move from the Appalachians into Florida through a corridor, it could communicate with others what it was like where it was, and vice versa. Now I know that's an assumption, but geez, how do these things exist for so long without figuring out how to communicate at some level like that with each other?
Turn left at Big Rock and go 20 knocks.
Well, I look at because here's the thing, and I'm not out to say one place is better than the other, because Dan, if you go by encounters, these things exist in a hell of a lot of areas. It's just we can argue about the numbers and where and all that.
Right.
But when you look at Florida, there's no doubt it's dense and it's thick, and that there are a lot of areas that they could exist fairly elusively without a whole lot of hard work going into remaining elusive. What you run into is if that population was to be expanding in that area, how many of them would be comfortable existing in that area or this area, that area of Florida. Now, you look at it and say, well, let's say a square 30 miles in Canada, you could have X amount of them comfortably. And then you look at it in Florida, that square 30 miles, X amount of them comfortably. But now as Canada, as they overpopulate that area, it's not that hard to just move into the surrounding area. Whereas in Florida, where do you move to when you're in the, you know what I'm saying? So as populations fluctuate, as they grow, is that maybe a reason why some of them migrate into these other areas that it's just easier to exist in rather than in huge numbers? Because, with us, you put a country boy in the city, he don't want to live there anymore. And in kind of a rudimentary sense, that could be happening in areas of Florida if that population starts expanding. How do some of them say, I'm more comfortable moving out of here into a different area? And how do they do that? So it's like Pat said earlier, you got a town on the other side of a ridge, and whether or not a Bigfoot's chasing something or evading something, it pops over the ridge. It's like, holy shit, there's a town there, right? Didn't know there was. Now it knows. It's the same thing in Florida. If something's going to leave Florida or migrate to Florida, you don't know what's around the next bend unless you or somebody you're with has traveled that path before and understands how to navigate those paths. Yeah. So it's just, without getting into too much speculation, my mind just starts wondering what would be the reason, and if so, how would they do it? It'd be by the communication with others of how to do it, where to go. Show me. The three of us want to go from here to there. Let's find somebody who knows how to get from here to there.
Let me show you all this real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
So can you see this?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
it's like the green swamp.
Yeah, so this is all the green swamp, but from this part over here all the way down and back is 100 miles. I'm sorry, kilometers. Let me switch to miles.
Yeah, mate. Cornell's not here, mate. We don't understand kilometers.
62 miles. Okay.
Kilometers.
And I think what was cool is I live right here.
Don't give your location away.
I'm exactly right here. So it's 30 minutes. The University of South Florida is right around this area. These are county parks, and I have seen, to me, one of the best Bigfoot videos was at Lettuce Lake Park. Okay, this is the Hillsborough River, and I don't have Fletcher Avenue on here, so I'm already lost, so I apologize for that. But what I'm saying is, this is a preserve where we had a Class A sighting up in here. You see where 75 and 275, I think, come together. There you get a little perspective.
Yeah.
And let me get this map thing off. But when I say choke points, it's like, look at this right here. One preserve to another. And I've been in that. That is crazy out there. I've been out there with Tim T and a lot of other people. That's why I got the kayak, guys. It's just straightforward. It's just straight up. That's what it was. And then over here, you get into Colt Creek and Green Swamp. But look at this. And then into Ocala. Look at that.
Yeah. Wide open.
It looks, well, you say wide open, and yes, it's flat, but you can't see 30, 40 foot in most of those places.
No, that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Wide open for them.
So I don't believe that the argument is can they exist there. Really the argument is how many could exist there. When you show me a map that says from there to there is, let's say 75 miles.
75 miles, yeah. And so my area that I work literally is I'm close to home, guys. It's right in here.
Those are the best Bigfoot research spots, the ones that you can get to frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, you got your Trail to Bigfoot guys, your Chris Connors, and they're all out in here.
There's a lot of groups going in there. I've recently learned about the independent Sasquatch team or whatever. There's other groups in Green Swamp too.
But I think that's what Pat and I were, when we were jokingly, talking about this, is that, but look what happens to this forest right here. You got a little bit of button hook here. You got a little, to me, these are interesting points. I see all these little areas here that there is a connection, but man, to get to them is difficult. But I was in an area today, this weekend with my wife, which is on the other coast. And I wish I had the interstate on here, New Smyrna Beach. So I went up, and it's one of these forest areas. Oh man, I don't know where it is. It may be right in here.
Well, now you're getting close to Cape Canaveral there.
Yeah.
That's where they take off and land their spaceships. Oh my God.
But look at this habitat too. Look at that.
Oh yeah, that's totally wild. Just remote and wild.
And so, and all the trails, you got trails, you got Jeep trails, you got all that. But the thing is, these are where your normal everyday hikers go. So I laugh sometimes when people go, well, I can hear a car go by and I could be standing right here. But dude, it's like
you could be dying right there. No one would ever find you.
Not very wide.
Yeah. No one would ever find you. If you broke your leg right there and you were dying of height of whatever.
So I think my point is, when I say choke point and people see narrow splotches like this between little gaps between connecting forests, I only want to illustrate that a mile in Florida is crazy. It might as well be 50 miles anywhere else. Because I guarantee you, none of us can get across that. But you can in a kayak.
You can in a kayak, yeah. And that looks difficult too, actually.
Yeah, that's going to be hours of paddling and dealing with debris and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so Matt, you've convinced me, Matt. We're getting kayaks. When we go
you understanding...
Well, Jeff was in on it too, so...
You understanding the terrain then really well, Matt. My question would be, if you had to guess how many would exist in the state of Florida, what would you guess?
I've only been in this 2 years. I wouldn't even make a fool of myself trying. But
yeah, I'd hate to try too. The only reason
I wouldn't
I
even
bring
throw
it
a
up,
number out. I really wouldn't. But I can tell you, there's groups going out. Now, whether or not you believe it or not, I mean, there are groups going out in Florida that are getting prints almost every time they go out. And everybody goes, that's a problem. There's people been doing this for 10 years and, only gets prints, once every 3 years. But I don't know. I have to say, if it looks like the print will fit in a shoe, it probably will. And if I saw a print that was 14 inches and looks like it could fit in a modern day shoe, I would probably use a 3D app on it, but I wouldn't stop and cast it. But if I saw a print that was 10, 8, 9, 14, 17 inches and it had a big ass toe going straight out the side, that didn't belong, that they would be like, seriously crippled. Now, to me, that's a Squatch print or something we don't know about, whatever God calls this creature.
If I was to give my opinion of your chances of getting finding something to cast in Florida versus any other state, I'd say you're probably one of the best chances is in Florida. And I say that because you have a very controlled area in which they can exist. I know it seems vast to you, but when you're talking 75 miles long, 16 miles wide, this and that, it's not like 1,000 of them can be there, because here's why I say that. The whole border of those controlled areas, when you were showing that the green swamp and kind of where you live, when you zoom in to the actual edges of that, I see gridded block by block by block paved roads going in communities all around it. There is a hard outline of where they can't be.
Right.
Okay. So you're talking about
with that.
Areas where it's thick and it's jungle-like and you could be elusive and you could be there, but I mean, maybe 100, 200 of them at the most, even for that big area, just because the idea of there being a lot of them, you wouldn't have an encounter now and then by people jeeping and hiking. You'd have encounters every day if it was allowed. As thick as it is, they're going to get close to those borders. And when the borders are hard edges of neighborhoods and traveled routes all around it, so since they travel and move in these controlled spaces, you can, like you're saying, the choke points, those are casting magnets right there, right? Yet you should be able to go out there and find prints if these things are existing in there. And I'm not saying every day you should, but with a lot of effort, with the right people and the right skills, you should be able to. It just would make sense. But, I look at that same area in where I'm at, or, up where Alex is at, that area that, let's say this is an area where we get a lot of encounters and is a really highly forested area. You get to the edge of that, you cross, a few open areas here and boom, you're back into another big, huge wooded area. There's not gridded paved streets and neighborhoods and schools and shit, around it. Yeah. So it's a lot easier to say in that area, there could be a shitload of them because they move so easily from area to area. Whereas down there, it's not as easy to move from those one area to another area that
right.
I just don't see the populations being big. But as far as finding evidence, you're working with more of a controlled airspace, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
Despite the fact it's hard to navigate.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's better than just a shot in the dark in terms of a place as large as the Everglades. I mean, you get a spot like that corridor you were showing, Matt. That is as hard as it is to get in that area. That is a lot easier than navigating an area larger than Rhode Island.
Yeah.
In terms of predicting predictability and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But and then you see like an area like Ocala, it's that sugar sand, right? That stuff is not great for tracks. Whereas I would imagine in some of the swampier spots, you probably have a better chance of getting prints or casting, or at least seeing good tracks, because that sugar sand, it falls apart right away into a big blob. I mean, it's hard to drive over that stuff. I almost got my Toyota stuck a couple of times in that kind of stuff, which I didn't really expect. I didn't expect that in Florida. In the forest, like a beach kind of sand consistency.
So here's the forest right here, starting over here at the left with Cypress Creek. This is a really, really cool area. Where the Class A sighting happened was right here in this little unmarked space. And I've been in this space. Yeah, can you cover it in a day? There's a place you can go right in here, and you can see some trails. And you get back in here, guys, it is just nasty swamp.
Yeah.
And it's flooded. It's probably about 7 inches deep. And we got back into this area, back and right around in here, and coming down one of these trails. I don't know if they even show up here. They're grassy trails, so to speak, almost like the old, train trestle sort of things, but they're not built up. And you're walking on them. And that was one I went out with a crew here, and it was like live tree busted, broke over the trail coming from right to left. You go up 25 yards, same thing from the left going to the right. You get up a little bit, you walk more than 20 feet. I stop, and because I'm into forest language, and these guys I was with totally ignore bends, breaks, all that means they don't even look for it. And so it was a lot of fun. And I remember walking up there and saying, "Oh, but there's 3 breaks right behind you." And they said, "What?" And they turned around. There was three saplings, like 8, 10, and 12 feet high, almost just like that, within a 3-foot diameter. Snap, snap, snap. And then there's another one about the same size, just going straight up untouched. And they were all going over. And I went, "See, I look for stuff like that." And they go, "Well, that's interesting. So you're saying there's a block, and 3 breaks." And I said, "Yeah." So when I see that, my antenna goes up and I start to pay attention. And we walked a little farther, and I had just said, "Guys, I feel like I'm in their living room." Because all of a sudden it just got spooky, and we were headed right through a swamp. And I didn't even know this yet because you couldn't see the swamp 30 yards ahead. We got up to that 30 yards. There's a swamp with moving water through it. It was actually moving. The guy started walking out there. Within 5 minutes later, we saw the biggest white X I've ever seen in my life. Perfectly crossed, bleached white, all in a green, brown, and black swamp. And they all just looked at me. I went, "I told you, this is just an interesting place to me." And it was also coming out of there that I got one of the blob squatches where my camera was on a gimbal and I'm just walking out and had it zoomed on about 100 millimeters, 150. And my camera will track on a gimbal. So I can easily, move forward and be stable. And there's this palm frond like this. And I just have this eyes, forehead, nose, eyes, everything just lined up. It's on my Instagram channel. It's a blob squatch. But it really isn't a blob. It's actually sharp, but it's still inconclusive. You still can't say, "Yeah, that's something." But man, to me, I see a face looking right through there, staring right at me. And I'm walking right at it coming out of the swamp. And it was right here between 2 interstates. And yeah, can you walk that in a day? Yeah, we did. But it's some thick crap, man. And
so whoever's running the map, zoom out on just enough right there. Hold it right there.
Yeah.
Now,
so
I know
my area.
Pat's mind is already going 100 miles an hour.
Oh, I bet it
on
is.
the same thing that mine is. And this is the question I'm going to ask you. Even though none of us want to guess how many would be there, can we at least all agree on the fact that there's likely a dozen individuals in that area during any given 24-hour period? Would you say that's likely or unlikely?
Up here, probably maybe
a dozen.
I don't know. I'd say a dozen.
I would say on a given day, you're probably. We didn't run into anybody.
No, I'm talking about Bigfoot, and I'm talking about trying to shoot on the low end. You might say there's 100, 200, but I'm saying, can we agree that there's likely a dozen in that whole green swamp area?
Oh, if you include the green swamp and this corridor?
All of what we're looking right here.
I could probably agree to that if the green swamp is included as well, because that area, from what I've heard from Matt and others, seems
this
big.
Is what I'm saying. If you had 25 or 30 guys, people, I should say, let's not say guys, people that were all like Pat, drone operators, dual camera thermal drones, $10,000 to $12,000 drones, and every 25 miles on the major roadways surrounding the whole outside of this perimeter, every 25 miles, one of them was there running hourly flights with a drone as far as they can reach out at night with thermal on in one night. If there was just a dozen of them out there, in one night, you'd have thermal images of them. If you had a concentrated effort like that of 25, 30 guys, wouldn't you think so, Pat?
Nope. The thermal drone doesn't work well there. It's just too thick, bro.
Well, you got to realize the palms, the Florida palms that are on the ground there, if you watched any Trail of Bigfoot, Chris Connor and his crew, they're 12, 15 feet high. When they're walking, if you watch any of their videos, they're actually... The palm is there and breaks up, and they're actually walking under it's like Land of the Lost. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
It gets crazy under there. So all they'd have to do is if they heard it or just sit. That's what I'm saying. Trying to find that guy who, killed his girlfriend. All he had to do was sit under a tree, stab a fish, an alligator or whatever. He was a woodsman. He could, my wife goes, "Oh, he can't last in there 3 days." I went, "Sure the hell he can." The only thing that stopped him was fire. That's the only thing he could not light was fire.
It's
but there's plenty to eat. I mean,
yeah, it's yeah. So I'm not trying to elbow you, Matt. This isn't
not at all.
This isn't personal. It's Jeff. Florida is the worst place in the United States to use a thermal drone. I can't think of any place worse. That's why
I would agree with that.
That much vegetation and that much daytime heat, it's just going to hold high temperatures to begin with. So despite it being that thick, it's hard to get a good signature. But
yeah, it's
maybe it's just the redwoods.
It's thick all year long. So to me, the whole advantage of a thermal drone is places where there are hardwoods where the canopy drops.
Well, like in your area right now, right? I'm assuming
right now,
until the spring. Yeah.
In the summertime up here in Georgia, even in North Georgia, it's just as damn thick as Florida. It's different vegetation, but it's thick as hell, man.
Yeah,
you can't see nothing through the canopy.
Up here, and I'm assuming in Minnesota too. Yeah. In the summertime, these areas get so incredibly thick, and you got insane amount of bugs and everything else.
Yeah,
very thick, and a lot, especially here in New England, where there's a lot of second and third kind of growth forests after there was logging and then logging done on top of it. So you have areas that are just hundreds of saplings and small trees that you can't see 5 feet into. Now I can go there. I can probably see a couple 100 feet in with a handheld thermal.
Yeah, it's the same thing here. I mean, we have a higher percentage of conifers in our area than maybe you do. And I know you got a lot of them, but I mean, we got a shitload of them.
Oh, yeah.
But the hardwoods are the same. The birches and the maples. And, that is kind of what comprises our poplars, birch, and maple,
do you guys have cedar swamps by any chance? Or...
We have along the rivers, we'll get a lot of the thing about cedars is, like birch, they don't need deep soil to grow. So in really rocky areas, you'll see a birch tree that will be 30 foot tall, and you can actually, a bear will rub its back against it and knock it over because the root structure may be wide, but it's only about this deep,
Yeah, we get a lot of the cedar swamps where there's a lot of rhododendrons. That's green year round. And those areas are actually, for whatever reason, I don't know if I'm assuming it has to do with the swamp, but they're a couple degrees warmer than other spots. So there's actually moose that love to hang out in cedar swamp kind of areas adjacent in a lot of parts here. So I don't know.
A lot of the wallows that you see in New Hampshire, when you're driving around the roads and you see kind of a wallowy looking area, there's oftentimes cedar scrubs all around the edges of it, it seems like.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the opinion that I think these things are here year round as well, because there's enough resources they can just move around into one area, especially up in the mountains, lower and higher elevations perhaps. But Florida is just such a different environment. Probably one of the most, I don't want to say the most difficult area in the eastern U.S. perhaps, just because you have so many environmental things to deal with, aside from just the logistics of technology, like the therm drone Pat was mentioning there.
The most difficult thing about Florida to me isn't just the physical characteristics. It's the fact that people who research and have never been in Florida and researched can't fathom it. There's no reference to it, right? I mean, it's just as hard for me you look at it on a map and you say, no fucking way, dude.
Right, and then
because you don't get it, right? You don't get it.
It completely changes your view. And I think that's a great point too. I don't know if Pat or Matt mentioned it, the fact that it's green year round. I mean, you have areas where there is a dry season, and the Everglades and those areas will look a lot dustier perhaps because there's a little less greenery, but there's still enough that you can't see that far into those spots. I mean, Ocala has a lot of those pines. So I mean, I was flying my drone over that area, and it was just the trees as far as you could see. Very thick walking through those areas, especially with the palmettos. I think the palmettos are people just don't really have them in other places as much.
Yeah, you really can't get pigeonholed into subscribing to this mentality of why would it be here and not there, or why would it be there and not here, because we have humans that live in igloos, and we have humans that live in rainforests. And oftentimes they're humans that have the ability to move wherever the hell and live wherever the hell they want to. And they don't. They choose extreme climates from one end to the other. And they like it there, and they survive there, and they enjoy being there. And why one would migrate out of northern Canada to a better climate and one might not migrate out of it is one's just tolerable to it and one isn't tolerable to it. They're not machines. They are animals that have, they might have that human characteristic of having preferences. One might like it hot, one might like it cold. It's like, it's not like all deer don't like this and all deer don't like that, or bears only do this at this time of year and do that. There may be a bigger range of preference that we just don't really grasp,
Yeah, but that brings up another thought, which is, why in the heck would a Sasquatch leave Central Florida and experience even the Appalachian Mountains where I live,
right?
Which would be a temperature, a climate and culture temperature change that would just seem like it'd be a shock to even their system, unless they're just built for it naturally, no matter what. I don't.
Well, not to open up a can of worms, but I mean, we see things in nature right now. My home state of South Dakota, on the whole eastern half of the state, is farmland. It's flat, it's rivers, there's some river valleys, but for the most part, it's rolling hills and flat, and it's all agriculture. Okay, though it's divided in two by the Missouri River, and the western half is going to be the Badlands and then the forests of the Black Hills, which looks very much like Wyoming and Montana. Two extremely different sides of the state, right? Mountain lions are on the west side of the state. That's where they live. That's where they like to be. The east side of the state, about every year we get 4 or 5 times where a mountain lion shows up killing livestock or whatever. And it's like, how did this mountain lion get here, right? Why did it get here? And studies will give you different opinions, but the fact is when a young male gets kicked out of a territory, it moves to a different territory. And when it can't establish itself there, it gets kicked out of there, and it just by territorial domain, it gets displaced outside of where you would expect it to be. That could happen here. That could easily happen here. One individual is forced out of a group or a family group, and now it's in a different area, and it's forced out of that area by ones that won't accept it. And pretty soon that thing's 300 miles away from where it started, could be within that same year. It's just, I don't like I say, I hate trying to speculate that shit, but we see that in different species all the time. They even had, and I've told this story before, we had a mountain lion that was eastern South Dakota, and the DNR was trying to study, will it stay here? I mean, it's displaced. Will it actually try to live its life here? So they radio collared like 7 of them that they found out here on the eastern side. Twice a day, they'd fly a plane over and see how far did they move. And they weren't moving that far. About every 25 miles, one was kind of setting up shop, and that's just where it remained. They didn't all go find each other. Actually, if they got close to each other and had an encounter, they'd separate back to where they were. They wanted their own territories. One morning, one of them didn't show up when they did the flyover. That afternoon, it didn't show up. They flew over the next morning right away. It didn't show up. And that afternoon, they got a call from Kansas, 2 states away. You have to cross all the way through Nebraska to get to Kansas. On a railroad track, that mountain lion had been hit by a train.
Oh my God, really?
Well, how about
and they did an autopsy on it and found out that it had an abscessed tooth that was very infected. And they came to the conclusion that, unlike humans, we take Tylenol, antibiotics, whatever you have to do for an abscessed tooth. If you've ever had one, it will drive you insane if you stop moving. Yes. If you lay down, it will stop. It'll kill you. So they would run, and they can run 35 to 45 miles an hour. They run and gets their blood moving, and it doesn't hurt. And after they run for a half an hour, they stop and try to lay down, and it's pounding, and they start running again. Pretty soon they're disoriented. They figured out this thing traveled like 410 miles in 30, what did they say? It was like 50 some hours, low 50s, like 52 hours. It had traveled 410 miles. It would have had to have been running full blast to do that almost. But why would it keep running? This autopsy showed it had an abscess tooth. It made sense, right? We see the same thing with moose from northern Minnesota and Canada. We're out pheasant hunting in South Dakota, and here's a moose walking through a field. It's like 2-3 times a year we have moose down here walking through it. Shouldn't be here.
Right.
But and so we ignore them. But I about bet you if you shot it and did an autopsy on it, it's probably the same situation where it had an abscessed tooth or something that caused it to have to run to not feel pain. I'm just saying there's situations that we don't think about of why something would move from here to there. There's all kinds of reasons that just don't make sense to us on the front side, but on the back side, you can look at it and say, that's a plausible option.
Well, Jeff, are you familiar with the mountain lion that was killed in Connecticut? About an hour outside of New York City in 2011. There's a mountain lion, and they're not supposed to be in Connecticut, New England.
Yeah. I know in New Hampshire, for 2 decades, the DNR denied that they existed in New Hampshire.
I know a biologist who found DNA that was confirmed in 2001, and through the Wyoming Fish and Game, because they did a joint kind of DNA analysis on some samples from New Hampshire. And they said, well, this is a male mountain lion. You know, it fits the criteria of Puma concolor. And the New Hampshire Fish and Game then issued a statement. And this guy's a biologist who's very accredited. But this cat in Connecticut, I bring it up because I did a documentary called Lions of the East, and I focused on mountain lions here in New England. And I mean, the theories are out there. It's a really interesting topic. Parallels Bigfoot in a lot of ways.
There's the X guys.
But this mountain lion in Connecticut was its genetic makeup was from the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Isn't that crazy?
And so this creature had traveled, I mean, that's more than half the country away.
Yeah.
Supposedly it was seen along the way, this particular mountain lion, however they figured that out. But it was killed in an area that is an hour drive to Times Square. I mean, we're talking the most densely populated part of Connecticut, and that's a very densely populated state. You know, you got 4 million people in a small area.
Yeah.
And this cat was found there. And I actually met a police officer who saw it a few days before, crossed the road. Nobody believed him until it turned out it was killed a few days later. But I was just looking at the Florida Panther map. There's a confirmed sighting on one of the keys, one of the islands outside of Daytona Beach or Palm Bay.
I heard that too.
I mean, it's on someone's porch. And if you look at the map, this thing would have had to have either crossed a human bridge or road or swam in salt water to get to this area. I mean, that's just incredible on the topic of, mountain lions and panthers and big cats.
Well, I know in New Hampshire, after the DNR had basically been denying that they were there, and it may be related to the sample that you're talking about they found, somebody ended up catching one on a game camera, and it was undeniably that it's a mountain lion. And then they started searching that area for sign, and I think that's when they said they were finding rabbit kills, they were finding stool samples, things like that in that area after they thought, let's really start looking for it now that we know where one was photographed. And so, I mean, there's been writing on the walls for years, and people have been saying, hey, I think they're here all the way through the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then it was in the either late 2000s or 2010 somewhere where somebody got a picture of one, and they're like, oops, I guess we can't deny it anymore.
And here's the thing. There's the reason I say there's so many parallels is I'm a member of a lot of these sort of mountain lion truther groups, if we're going to call it that, online. It's just like the Bigfoot so-called community. But I've been so, shocked by the things that people will claim are mountain lions, which are obvious house cats, obvious, possums, or in some cases,
there's a lot of misidentification.
So I think that's just a good sort of thing to sort of gauge human, eyewitness vulnerabilities, let's say, us as people. But in these groups, it's the same kind of thing. You have these hardcore people on one side. Well, we would have gotten one on a trail camera, because there's a lot of hoaxes that go on online. And there's a conspiracy angle with the local governments. People are convinced that the states are bringing mountain lions in to control the deer population. So it is a super interesting microcosm in terms of, that similar sort of thing that's going on with the Bigfoot world. But I do think the parallels are there in terms of, just not only the communities around it, but the fact
well,
that
it shows you how
animals.
elusive a species can be.
Exactly.
There are a lot of similar characteristics between a mountain lion and what you would expect there to be in a Bigfoot. And that's that if a mountain lion even hears a human being talking from 100 yards away, it runs the other direction. They are very skittish. They do not want to confront humans at all. And I would think that if a Bigfoot had a choice, I can either evade and elude and be elusive and slip into the wilderness and not be seen, or I could sound off and make something aware of where I'm at. They will always choose A over B if they can.
So Pat,
they are
pyromedic,
but they are in the East. I mean, that's proven that they are in the East. Mountain lions do exist in the East.
Oh yeah, actually they're starting to come to, once they start realizing they can be there. Now you start to open up your mind, where else can they be? And all of a sudden you start realizing that. Well, just the example I gave in South Dakota, you don't understand. The west and east side of the state is divided by a river that is literally 2 miles wide. I mean, the Missouri River, there's only 5 major highways that cross this anywhere in the state. So it's either going to walk 2 miles across along a highway to get across that river, or it's going to swim. And these things, believe it or not, a mountain lion can swim like a son of a bitch. I mean, they can swim a long way.
They are cats that are not scared of water.
Yeah. They are not afraid of water. They can swim and they will swim.
There's game camera footage on YouTube where you can see mountain lions or Florida panthers swimming through a big swampy area of the Everglades on the trail camera. I mean, it's incredible. And that's funny. That's my documentary, Lions of the East. The guy was saying, he's like, I think that's the guy's film that I watched.
Yeah,
but, it's a super fascinating topic, and you go to at some of these events I go to. I don't get that many Bigfoot things. I'll get a few, but overwhelmingly it's sightings of mountain lions. That's just all the time in all these eastern states. It's really actually pretty interesting.
There's so much misidentification with all cats, because bobcats, you got to understand, a bobcat probably maxes at about 16 to 18 pounds, right? But it looks like the thing weighs 40 pounds when you see one. Yeah. If you shave all that fur off it, there ain't a whole lot left. Same thing with lynx. Eurasian lynx, which are up in Alaska and stuff, they're a lot bigger than a Canadian lynx that you'll see in most parts of Canada. Canadian lynx, tops, you're probably pushing 35 pounds. Eurasian lynx, you could push 70 pounds. I mean, almost twice as big.
What?
But, oh yeah, there's big Eurasian lynx.
But
especially
they have the distinctive ears and
whiskers. But the thing is a lot of them, when they're in captivity, they can get huge.
A lynx is really identifiable by its ears.
Well, okay. So the one thing when somebody says they saw a mountain lion, the one thing I'm trying to identify is the tail. Okay. Yeah. That's the most, the tail is as wide and thick as your arm. And the last 8 inches of it or so is midnight black.
Yes. That's
and the tail is beige. Okay. So if you see one walking, tail usually out, just like a house cat, just, countering its balance as it's walking, you can see that tip. If it's on a deck and it jumps off, you're going to see that tail and see that black tip. Most people say, I saw a mountain lion. They don't even understand. Some of them are seeing a bobcat from the front.
Yeah.
Or it's looking around a tree at them, or even in Canada, a lynx. But here's the thing.
It is. I mean, there are some of these groups.
A bobcat and a lynx, they don't have tails. Their tails are like this long. They're stubs. A mountain lion has a big, long tail that's almost as long as the span of its back.
Yeah.
So I see it a lot. Like, we get frustrated in the Bigfoot kind of world when people are sharing obvious hoaxes or things that have been outed years ago. Well, in the mountain lion sort of movement, there are people that post photos that are obvious trail camera photos that you can find right off of basic Google search saying this was taken the town over from me in Maine. And then, no, that actually is a photo from Colorado from 10 years ago. This happens almost on a monthly basis. So it kind of goes to that question of what motivates people, whether they're hoaxing or they're just trying to get that sort of minute of fame kind of thing, the motivations. It just kind of goes to show how weird people can be. I mean, that's something I saw, that it's a direct parallel to stuff in the Bigfoot world. And you're dealing with an animal that's a known animal that we know exists. But people are so not used to seeing things like bobcats or fishers.
The amount of misidentification when it comes to visual verification within cats and different species of cats is crazy. And then the audible misidentifications. Because a lynx is louder than a mountain lion when it comes to projection. And you wouldn't believe that, because a mountain lion a male can be 180, 190 pounds. Okay. Females will max out at about 125.
Jesus.
But I mean, we were mountain lion hunting a week and a half ago when we had this first big snowstorm. We were out in the Black Hills. We treated three different females. We were looking to shoot a male, and we had 3 different females treated. And we just walked away from them. But they
have you ever
look
tried
huge.
the meat, Jeff? Have you ever tried mountain lion meat?
No, but a friend of mine has, and they're saying that it's pretty good. I've
heard that too, and which is strange because predators typically taste good. Right? They have a lot of the stomach acids and that sort of stuff.
The YouTube documentary of Steve Ranella, who has the show Meat Eater, which is a
I love
series. Meat Eater. He'll hunt something and then afterwards do like a 10-minute cooking portion of how they prepare it and eat it. And he was doing one with mountain lion. I'm like, dude, there's no way in hell I'd eat that. And then everybody at that table he's hunting with who'd never tried it, they're all eating it and say, man, this is great. And I'm like, really?
That's actually where I heard it. I heard it from Steven Ranella on Joe Rogan. It was like a year or 2 ago. And that was like, it's really kind of surprising. You don't think that a cat, something like that would be appetizing, but
it tastes just like Chinese food.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but the vocal misidentifications, I mean, a bobcat, the range of sounds even that they can make, especially with bobcats. And I put out a video on my channel here recently of all these different ranges of sounds.
I think lynx fascinates me the most. Bobcats and mountain lions, I don't hear anything weird there.
Well, the only time you do with bobcats is I've got a 5-minute video of 2 bobcats. Their noses are about this far apart, 2 alpha males, and they're not happy.
They're going
and they start out just little growls, and it's almost like a purr that's really audible, right? And then one of them will sound off, and they'll escalate this thing. Like, I got to sound bigger than he did. So you start realizing the range of sounds, right? And that's where people get screwed up when they say, I heard something tonight, not sure what it is. You associate in your mind, I know bobcats are in this area, and here's what a bobcat sounds like. And you think of this sound. You don't realize the range of sounds that they can make. So now that becomes a little confusing to people. But then also mountain lions, for how big they are and how loud they are, when you hear a lynx who's like 1/4 of the size of a mountain lion scream and howl into the night, that the projection and the HZ that call goes out at, and the sustainability. I mean, they don't look like they have huge lungs. They can hold a howl for like 30 seconds, and sounds like you're standing on the edge of hell when you hear it. It is just haunting.
I got it pulled up. I'm gonna play it because this
is it. The video, the ones in the road.
Yeah, this is freaky. But remember, lynx are not common in the U.S. So
no, they like up in northern Minnesota. I have one on my kayak route that I take in my research area. A lot of times I'd end up having it follow along the river with me.
I'm still waiting to see.
The only reason I even know about this video is because Ernie sent it to me. And he sort of sent it to me in reference of the scream that he and I heard that night that we disagree about.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to quickly point out, dude, there are no lynx in Georgia, bro.
See, and I would agree with that. and then
Unless
I
there's a
see a
state.
moose in Iowa or
No,
in
there are no
Nebraska
lynx
and
in
say, what
Georgia.
the hell's going on here?
There's
you know?
never ever. I mean, if there's a lynx in Georgia, it's in a wildlife like a zoo or something.
Okay, well, Pat,
guys-
let's suppose you get your hands on a kitten and you are raising a lynx or two kittens, and they either escape or they get to a point where you're like, fuck it, I can't do this anymore, and you send them off. What happens then?
They
I'm
do it in
not
Florida.
saying it's likely. It's highly
Yeah.
unlikely.
They
But
do it
it's
in
not
Florida all the time.
impossible. It's
You're
not
right.
impossible.
It's not impossible. Thank you for pointing out that nothing is 100% in this world.
Could be an escaped animal, exotic pet trade. I mean, hey,
I'll tell you, 40
Florida gets a
years
lot of
ago-
that crazy.
Exactly.
wildlife.
40
Georgia
years
too.
ago,
You guys are like Florida light.
40
All right.
years ago,
Well, just
somebody
let me
said,
play
I
it.
saw a 14-foot long python in a swamp in Georgia. You would have been laughed out of the freaking bar. And
Georgia-
now they're all over.
That,
Georgia's
I
Florida
can buy
light.
that.
That's what that's my northerner riff at you guys. Georgia is Florida light.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. Matt,
Settling the beef there.
get out of here, Matt. Get Matt out of here.
I actually do have to go because I gotta
Okay,
go
let's
work.
hear the Lynx video, though.
Yeah.
All right. Let me
Oh, this is the
unmute
one.
it.
Yeah, I love this one.
This
Oh,
should
those are
work.
just kitty cats.
Mhm.
Sounds like a woman screaming.
God.
So cool. Who runs into this?
It's freaky sounding.
Oh, geez.
It's like a child.
Mhm.
Almost, yeah. God, look at the feet on those things, man. Hind legs.
It's just a gravelly wailing.
Yeah, it's freaky.
I like that title, Intense Conversation.
Yeah.
Do you know how rare this is?
Man, that's
I like that last one.
No, you're right though, Pat. I mean, it's highly unlikely that you'd ever see one south of the Mason-Dixon line anywhere. But it's not unlikely, even though where Alex is, the DNR will say they're not there, but it is not
they
hard
could
to
be
imagine
they could be
one
up there. Yeah.
We get
easily.
cited.
Whether it's
I mean,
northern Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Idaho, Montana, any of those states, they can.
there
be.
was 100% probably dozens of lynx in Maine. That whole part of Maine is just Canada. That's basically just stolen, not stolen, but Canada. If that wasn't Maine, that'd be Canada. I mean,
Well, you'll know by
tracks.
tracks because, like Pat said, I mean, that's the distinct difference if you're looking at tracks. Is a full-grown bobcat and a full-grown lynx is two different critters. I mean, one's under 20 pounds and one's about 35, but their footprints. I mean, a bobcat's footprint is about that big. A lynx's footprint is literally bigger than my hand.
Massive paws.
It's just
Yeah,
that's how they stay on top of the snow is these big.
right.
Yeah, they're
footprints.
hind paws.
Natural
yeah, you're right.
snowshoes.
Like natural snowshoes.
And they
yeah.
say like from just sitting down, they can jump 18 feet into the air.
God, that's
I
hard to
mean-
believe, but okay.
Cats are incredible. I have such an appreciation for just cats, mountain lions. I mean, tigers.
Mhm.
To the bobcats too. I mean, they're just such a fascinating creature. You know, you have a lot of us have house cats. You know, and you just see some of these behaviors light in them, and then you wonder, well, take that. I mean, when you realize that I've had mountain lions purring within a few feet, you know, in captivity, and you can feel it from just a few feet away.
Oh wow.
I mean, they're incredible animals. They squeak. They make little squeaking noises. They can make little meowing type noises. It looks like a big cute kitty, but I mean, given
that's where we run into problems. Is not just you're using one species as an example, but people say, "Well, I know what this animal sounds like. I know what that animal."
Yeah.
I learned one thing when I put together this compilation video that I've got on my channel. I have the sound a badger makes. Now, I've heard that badgers are mean. They can be very aggressive, pretty dangerous. They've got really long claws. but I've never heard one like sound off. And then I heard these audio recordings of badgers, and I was like, there's no freaking way I ever would have guessed that's a badger. I mean, it's so easy to understand that when you're out in the dark, wherever you're at, and you hear something and you're going through your head of all the animals in your area and you say, I can't find one that matches, is because you're really pigeonholing yourself into thinking what's the sound you'd expect it to make rather than being familiar and what's all the ranges of sound it's capable of making.
Dude,
do you guys get fishers in your area, Jeff, in Minnesota? Yeah, the sounds they make, I mean,
yeah,
I cannot match the scream that I heard that night. I can't match it with any known animal in the Southeast,
right?
Much less, North Georgia. And Ernie still, I mean, he disagrees with me to this day. He thinks it's a known species, but I'm not sure because I can't match it. And I'm not pigeonholing. It was my objective mission to match it, because I wanted to match it, because the last thing I wanted was to think there's an unknown thing crossing 30, 40 yards away from me, screaming at me in the middle of the night.
Right.
Like that was the last thing I wanted. I wanted
what I would describe that situation for you, Pat, is just like when me and Doug were talking last night about research. When I'm researching something, I have to approach it with the same vigor to try to poke a hole in it and shoot it down as much as I want to use it to support a theory that I have. Okay. I want it to be right.
Yeah.
But I have to approach it with that same vigor to shoot it down and show that that's not capable of doing that. And what Pat finds himself in is part of you says, God, I really believe I had an encounter, right? And you want to find evidence to support that by saying, I can't find something else. But then again, Pat does display the same vigor to try to find something that can make that noise. Just show me something that can, so I can finally say, maybe it wasn't. But until you find it, you can't do that. You have to assume you are supporting that theory that they're there because you heard it.
Well, that was years ago, and I still can't find it.
Yeah.
So, the only thing that comes close is stuff that people post audio wise as, labeled as Bigfoot sounds, so I don't know. I didn't see it. So at the end of the day, I could never say, but if I have this conversation with Patrick Vaughn in private, he'd be like, I'm pretty sure, I don't speak for Patrick, but opining, I'm pretty sure he would be like, what screamed at you in those woods that night, and so that always brings me kind of back to, was that a freaking Sasquatch? And then, 2 or 3 years later, I had my wood knock encounter in that same exact spot. And so, okay, that ain't no woodpecker, so in the middle of the night, banging on a tree, again, 30, 40 yards off my tent. Like, So anyway, well, Matt, thanks for being here. I know you got to run, bro.
Yeah, I do. And I appreciate the dialogue. And I'm glad we learned something from a fun little text chain. That was good.
And Matt, we'll be in touch because you just gave me so many ideas. I think I'm going to scrap a few ideas and switch. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, dude.
Afterwards.
After seeing the maps, I got to admit, I mean, I would like to find a 7 to 10 day stretch and load up all my kayaks and come down to Clearwater. And I want to go to Clearwater and spend the first few nights at the beach in a hotel and spot up, and then I'll go hang out with Matt in the swamp.
I just want to go out.
Too.
I just want to go out because I know some guys that do go out in their kayaks and they hang up one of those little hammock swings. Maybe it has a net, maybe it doesn't. And they just kayak out and stay up all night, maybe take a little nap. pack up, go back to base camp the next day. I don't think I'm quite there yet.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
But
in an area that I haven't had an encounter or don't know there yet to be something, I would do it. It's once I start getting, like in my research here, once I'd had several weeks of interaction there, and then I tell Doug about this, and he's like, dude, you should just go sleep on a cot out there at night with no lights and see what happens. And I'm thinking about this going, well, I don't think I can do that. And he goes, well, I wouldn't. I'm just saying that. And I'm like, well, if you wouldn't, why the hell are you telling me I should?
Matt, strength in numbers, right? Well, a few of us, let's do it. I'm totally down for that sort of thing. Also, as backup, I may or may not already have a tab open looking at Airbnbs in the Tampa area, but yeah, that's a different story.
Well, I'd say this. Yeah,
I have an Airstream in the backyard, all hooked up with power. It's powered.
Oh, there you
365.
go.
Oh, right on.
Nice. But I'd say this, Alex. Yeah, save your drone battery power for B-roll.
Yeah.
Not.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Not observation. Because
Wait. Check the tape. Everybody mark down the stream right here. B-roll drone.
In Florida.
Not for observation. No, you just said it. I just won the debate, dude. This clip is coming out when I debate you on drone versus kayak.
That's
you
fine.
just lost.
I just
lost, dude.
I can give the extended clip of the context where I clarify in Florida.
I think it'd be a good gator camp.
There's a lot of tools that I use here that I would leave at home. But like if I was to go down there with Matt, one of the things that I would want to do is, but you'd have to stay within range of what you set up. But you set a laser shooting from one tree to 70 yards away to another tree. And when something comes and breaks that laser, it sets off an alarm on your phone or on whatever your laptop, whatever you have with you. I think it'd be fun to make a connection of 6 or 7 of those in an area, just laser lines, and wait to see if something breaks them. Now you're going to have different things that aren't Bigfoot, obviously, just from the wildlife in the area. But man, that at least at that point, get your thermal out and start walking that direction right now.
Yeah,
a lot of ideas. We'll
lots of ideas.
Certainly will be fun. Alex, I'm glad you're coming down our way, and I very much look forward to being a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always wanted to get to the North Georgia area. Just that, Bigfoot Museum aside, it's just the rich history of sightings. So yeah, I'm excited. We're definitely doing a lot. But like I said, I think I'm literally going to scrap one of the areas we were going to go to and just focus on hanging out with Matt and sticking in that area.
Well, Matt. Look at you. You're becoming an influencer in the Bigfoot world.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, newbie becomes influencer, right? Yeah. Right.
Hey, 2 years. You're a smart guy. Yeah. You check the tape well. But thanks for being here, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up. I appreciate you guys being here. Alex, thanks for jumping in. I'd actually forgotten I brought up the Florida thing tonight, and I'd kind of forgotten that you talked to me about that and the North Georgia thing. And so
it was just funny because I saw it, and then you were talking about it. I'm like, I've been obsessed with this for the past 2.5 weeks. So I'm like, this is perfect.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of bridges the gap, Matt. I mean, we could still have GIF wars. That's
I'm sorry, I was just writing down the timeline there. So
okay, all right, that's fine.
I know that, quite honestly, personally, I don't know that I'll be able to say there are no Florida and Bigfoot with a straight face anymore after really having this conversation and looking at some of the maps.
Well,
definitely.
I'm willing to paddle. I'm willing to come paddle.
And we should have this conversation in a couple months or so after everything's all said and done. Just as Matt, you're down there all the time, so you obviously have that perspective. I am not really biased in that regard. If it's interesting, if it is, I don't think it's conducive, I'll say that, but it seems pretty interesting. So
before you make up your mind on paddling, Google Silver Springs monkey kayak.
Yeah, I already seen that.
The ones that they have like hepatitis B, those monkeys. So it's a bad scene. Yeah.
Why? Well, answer me this. Before we start wrapping up, if that's the case, like, why have they not gone in there and just like killed them?
I don't know.
Or trapped them. Doesn't seem like it'd be hard to trap them with a cage full of bananas.
Why would you trap a wild monkey, invasive species that has hepatitis B? That sounds like a death sentence to me.
Well, by getting them, you show up in the morning and you got 50 of them in a trap. It's a lot easier to eradicate them than go out and trying to plank them out of trees. But
I trap and kill basically. So tannerite.
Yeah. Or
I don't know.
20 gallons of diesel in a match.
I got so many.
It seems like aggressive, invasive species of monkey in Florida that has hepatitis B should just be killed. Sorry.
That is in a highly visited park where it's high probability it's going to bite somebody if they're holding the banana in front of its face.
Oh, you can YouTube it. They're attacking people's picnics regularly. It's like a chaotic scene.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
you wonder why I don't go to Florida.
Yeah,
like why
they don't show you that on those damn tourism commercials. All we see is the sugary sand beaches. They don't show the killer monkeys.
Well, we're waiting for the documentary from the man himself. He'll show it.
All right, fair enough. So
we're putting Florida out there for sure. We will do our best to document the craziness that is Florida and Georgia too. Hey,
hashtag Florida man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up, guys. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a part of the discussion. I hope this kind of discussion loosely can branch out. Like, I encourage other shows to have the same kind of discussion. Don't worry. I'm not going to be like, oh, you're ripping me off. You're copying me. No, I'm saying here on air, let's branch the discussion out as wide as we can get it. And maybe we could learn something. Maybe we could figure something out. I don't know. I'm just trying, dude. I'm just trying. Trying to move the ball down the field. It's 3rd and 1. Let's move the ball down the field. Fair enough?
Right on.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex. Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Jeff. We will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks, chat, for participating. And, yeah, we'll see you on Friday.
I got it, Pat.
Check your own tape.